Hello and welcome to day 2 of week 2 of your Spanish online course. Today we're going to be talking about a very tricky subject, and it has to do with verb conjugation. But we're going to do it in context with a verb, actually two verbs, that we're going to work with throughout this week a little bit, and it's great practice for learning how to do what it is we're going to talk about today, but it's also a verb that you're going to find yourself using quite a bit. So it's something you definitely want to pay close attention to, and it'll help you throughout this course. We're going to be talking about two verbs today, ser and estar. And if you have your sheet out in front of you, it has an explanation, shows how they're spelled, and we'll be going over the uses for them. Both verbs, ser, S-E-R, and estar, E-S-T-A-R, mean to be. So in English we have one verb, in Spanish they have two verbs that they both mean the same thing, but they're used in different occasions. So we're going to discuss how they get used in different occasions, and then we're also going to talk about the different conjugations, and I'll talk about what that is in a minute. You already know what it is, but you don't know that you know what it is. And this is a perfect verb to learn that on. Even though it's a little bit irregular, it kind of helps you to understand what the idea is of conjugation. So if you got your sheet out, let's talk first about ser. So again, ser is a verb that means to be. And ser, when you use to be, is for permanent characteristics or situations, lasting attributes. So we have a list here, 1 through 6. If you're using ser, or you want to say to be, and you're describing somebody, I am Damien, I am Frank, I am Raul, you would use ser for that. And I have a short sentence there, but again, it talks about conjugation, so once we get towards the end, you'll be able to understand that a little better. When you're dealing with an occupation, when you're talking, like for example, I'm a teacher, and I want to say I am a teacher, that to be, the am that I'm using right there, I would use ser. Soy profesor, profesora del español. I'm a professor of Spanish. With characteristics, if you're talking about Amalia, for example, the example we have there, that she's intelligent, she's daring, she's friendly, another situation where we would use ser. When you deal with days of the week, today is Wednesday, tomorrow is Thursday. When you're dealing with time, it is 10 o'clock, anything like that, you use ser. When you're talking about origin, where somebody's from, I am from Shelby, for example, you use ser. And when you're dealing with a relationship, she's my wife, he's my husband, he's my uncle, she's my aunt, anything like that, you are going to make sure that you use ser as well. So I know that's kind of a lot to take in the second week, I guess, of the course. But the reason we're learning this, and I'm going to tell you about that in a second, is because part of learning to use verbs in Spanish is something called conjugation. In English, we don't use it very often. Let's take the verb like, to like. If I want to use like in sentences, I would say I like, you like, we like, they like. And the only time that I change anything in general in English in the present tense is when I say he likes or she likes, and we add an S to the end. And that's about as far as we get with conjugation with the vast majority of the verbs. In Spanish, for each different subject pronoun that you would use in first, second, third person, there's a change. So if you look down below in that first column under uses of ser, you can go down and you can see that I have listed out how you would use ser and how things can change. So, and the reason that we do this with this verb is because we actually do conjugate to be a little bit more in English than we do other verbs. It's irregular. So for example, the verb to be, if I want to use it with I don't say I be, I say I am. I have to change the verb. When I talk about you, I have to say you are. I don't say you be, I say you are. When I talk about he, I'll say he is. Again, not saying he be. We are, they are. And that changing of the verb is what conjugation is. That taking the verb in its base form and attaching it to a subject and changing it to make it make sense. That's conjugation, and they do that with every subset and every verb in Spanish, and there's lots of them to go through, which is why I have mentioned this is one of the most difficult concepts to learn in Spanish, because there are multiple conjugations for each verb depending on past tense, future tense, present tense. So it can be a little bit tricky, but we have to start working with it if you really want to start to learn Spanish. So I have down here listed yo soy, I am. Tú eres, you are. Él, ella, usted, es is he, she, is, or you are. And the difference between the you are there and the you are that we saw just above with the tú, tú eres. Tú, and this is new stuff unless you've taken Spanish class before, is a form of conjugation that you will use with people that you know well. The tú form is for people that you know well, that are younger than you, and it's not less respectful, but it's more familiar. That's the best way to describe it. The usted form that you see in the line just below that, the one that we just talked about, usted, U-S-T-E-D, that is how you would speak with somebody more formally, somebody you just met, somebody that's older than you, and it's a little more respectful and a little less familiar. You move down from there, nosotros somos, we are, and then down below that you have ustedes, ellos, ellas, son, which is you all or they are. Now if you see this in other Spanish books or you've taken Spanish class before, they have a tendency to build this into a boot because they have it separated between first person, second person, third person. They also have another one that they use that I'm not going to go over within this course because you will not hear it in this area. It's only used in Spain and a few other small pockets, but it's the os form, os. We're not going to talk about it, don't even worry about it. It's vosotros, and it just means, it's just another way of saying you all are. So forget I said it, but if you ever see another form in there when you're looking at something else or some of the other materials in class from the websites, be aware some websites have that included on there, but it's not something you're going to use. Okay, so to recap, when you want to conjugate the verb ser, which means to be, you want to change it so that you can use it in a sentence. You have to change it according to what you see at the bottom of your sheet to the left with each pronoun. So the yo is I, the tú is you, the él is he, the ella is she, and the usted is you formal, the nosotros is we, the ustedes is you all, ellos is they, ellas with an as at the end is they if it's all girls. And those are the subject pronouns that we use to replace names and also to speak to people directly. Okay, so you're going to see those throughout the course. When we start talking about conjugation more, we're going to go over those. We'll go over them more in depth. But I'm introducing the idea of conjugation and introducing it with a verb that's a little irregular, but that you really need to learn to start practicing. So now the other way that you would use to be is the use of the verb estar, E-S-T-A-R. This gets used when you're talking about position, like talking about my grandmother is sitting down or is seated, mi abuela está sentada. With location, you're talking about where something is. You could be talking about yourself and where you're at right now. I'm in the office. I am in the office. Yo estoy en la oficina. I would use estar with that. Action, which is present continuous or present progressive. We're not talking about that right now in this course. I think maybe towards the end, but that's the ing, the gerundio. So I am washing, I am jumping. We are playing that are that you use, or that to be that you use in that. You would use estar. Condition, something that's temporary. If you're sick, you would say estoy cansado, I am tired. You'd use estar. And then also with emotion, which is kind of a condition. So ser is very permanent. You look at your wall, it's a white wall. My wall is white, you would use ser. You talk about something that's a permanent situation, even though it's changeable. I mean, your wall is white, but it could be painted, but it's still a characteristic of that wall. It is a white wall. Versus estar, which is temporary, positions. It's things that aren't permanent, that are generally in flux, or things that can change. And that's the main difference between ser and estar, and we're going to be practicing it throughout this course. It is one of the few verbs that you just have to be able to dominate, to understand, in order to be able to use Spanish, because we used to be all the time. So the conjugations for estar are yo estoy, tú estás, él, ella, usted está, nosotros estamos, ustedes, ellos, ellas están. Okay, those are the conjugations. So we take the verb estar and we change it to estoy, estás, está, estamos, están, to make it into something that you can use in a verb conjugation. Now the tricky thing and the neat thing about this, we're going to continue to use these subject pronouns as we learn how to conjugate verbs, but in Spanish they actually don't use the subject pronouns, the yo, the tú, the el, the ella, nosotros, near as frequently as we do in English. They don't have to use them because the verb conjugation implies it. So that's something interesting you're going to see as we go through and practice, and once you learn Spanish, that becomes a little bit more understandable as to why they don't need that. So that is it. We did a recap of ser and estar, the uses. They both mean to be. It is two verbs that in English are all used in one verb, but in Spanish there's two different verbs. So we can start working on the different types of uses, but the other main piece that we introduced today is the verb conjugation. And as we go through and learn that, I want you just to kind of start thinking about that, because we're going to start talking about different types of verbs and how they get conjugated. And it is just it's a bitter pill that you have to swallow if you want to learn Spanish. But it is also, once you learn how to dominate that, there's a general pattern that you can kind of follow, and then when you see new verbs, you'll be able to use them. And there's some irregular verbs, and you may use it incorrectly here and there. But I'm going to let you in a little secret. A lot of Spanish-speaking people that are native Spanish speakers mess up with it too. So don't freak out about it, even with the irregular verbs and things like that. But just kind of relax, let it come. And one of the best ways to learn is not necessarily to memorize the verbs and memorize the patterns. That can help. It kind of gives you a base. But you really want to just work on practicing it with things that are around you. Okay, think about where you are with these verbs. Think of ser. How would I describe myself? How would I describe the things around me? We've talked a little bit about adjectives. You could use adjectives with this. So think of things that you can describe, and you can already, it's week 2, you could conceivably kind of make a sentence by saying, my desk is black. My computer is gray. My sister is tall. You could look for little words and think of things that you could actually describe around you. And you could also talk about location. You could talk about where I am right now, where somebody else is. So there's lots of different uses. So for your worksheet, that's actually what I'm going to ask you to do. And there's a worksheet that comes along with this. And it is just creating short little sentences with a basic subject. You can use one of the subject pronouns, the yo, the tú, the el, the ella, usted. Or you can try it with actual things if you want to talk about your sister, which would be a she. You could say my sister, or you could say her name and just put Maria or Francis is tall, and use some of the adjectives that we've already learned about. And the same thing with location. So there will be some specific instructions, and just do your best, and then I can give you some feedback. And that's how you're going to learn. You're going to attempt it. You're going to probably mess up on a couple, and I will give you some feedback, and then it'll kind of click in your brain a little bit, and then we'll do some review on it next week, and we'll practice again, and it'll start coming to you a little bit more comfortably, and we'll kind of keep building and keep building and keep building. So that's it for this week. I apologize. That's it for this video. We still have a few more videos this week, and we'll see you next video. Best of luck.